Stray is a third-person adventure game that casts you in the role of a cat who is separated from their family. Lost in an underground metropolis inhabited by machines, with only a friendly drone to guide you, you must ascend the various levels of the city, parkouring across buildings and through sewer systems, and sometimes being mischievous, while also unearthing the secrets of how the world came to be the way it is. If you're somebody who is seeing this game for the first time, or someone who has only given it one or two glances, it might be easy to shrug Stray off as a simple, cute cat game, while also attributing its significantly high praise to what appears to be an appealing gimmick not seen much in the industry. I'm going to be honest, there's a good chance that that's what created a mass interest in the game to begin with. I mean, how many games can you think of where you play as a cat exploring an in-depth cyberpunk-esque world? It's definitely an untapped market, and it caught my attention immediately as it was announced. I bought it on release, and yet it took me nearly 6 months to finally play it. God, I'm terrible with buying games. I'll admit, I bought it because you play as a cat. That was all the reason I needed. I went in with the expectations of cute cat, funny cat things, cool visuals, lots of running and jumping, being an irritant to the local population, stuff like that. What I got was, an emotional roller coaster. The fact that it took me 6 months to play this has me kicking myself every day. Okay, so yeah, on its foundation, Stray is a cute cat game. It's also a dystopian, post-apocalyptic sci-fi game with a surprisingly gripping narrative. It's also an experience containing a lot of complex themes ranging from life under subjugation by an oppressive state, to living in fear of a world outside the protection of the city, as well as trying to solve a long-lost mystery on how the city fell into the condition we see it in today. It is a strictly linear experience that is filled with a unique cast of characters that all add to the believability of the world, regardless of whether or not they are prominent in the story. Even the random NPCs sitting or roaming around the streets feel genuine, despite only having one-off conversations. It may be a relatively small city, but it is jam-packed with interesting world-building and places to explore, all with their own stories and communities, as well as their own aesthetics, attractions, ways of life, and appearances. I was not expecting any of this from a cute cat game. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What is Stray actually about? To answer that, it's best to start from the beginning. The opening segment sees you and 3 other cats chilling out inside a small tunnel. It's dark and wet outside, so the group has decided to settle here for the night. You can interact with the other cats before eventually going to sleep. The next day, the sun has risen, and they set off exploring the surrounding area. You traverse through overgrown industrial sites covered in greenery and vegetation, while the game introduces you to the basics of the parkour mechanics. It's also here where your induction on how to be a cat truly begins, with scratching trees. I'll get to the specifics on just how much work they put into making this an authentic cat experience later on, but anyone who has a cat can relate to putting up with this. Oh, also there's a dedicated meow button. All is relatively calm at first, and this area is really peaceful, something that's further helped by the game's stunning approach to presentation and lighting. More on that later. What should have been a routine jump, however, becomes the catalyst for disaster, as a loose pipe falls off and sends the main character plummeting to the depths below. I'm a cat person, and this was absolutely horrifying to watch. I guess you could call it a catastrophe. No, I'm not doing that. We're not going there. This is where your adventure truly begins, in the dark, decrepit sewers, wandering through empty, worn-down streets, with the only company being the odd characterful camera, who for some reason bounces its head every time you meow. These first levels are a stark contrast from what came before, in almost every possible way. You're alone, the sun is gone, with the only light sources coming from barely functional LEDs and signs. Everything is dirty, and nothing appears safe. The cameras make you feel like someone is watching you, and it doesn't help that you keep seeing these weird little creatures run away from you every so often. Despite nothing actually telling you to do so, you know you want to find a way back up to the surface, back to your cat family, as soon as possible. A sense of urgency is created as a result. What if you never see them again? What if there is no way out? You must get out of it quickly. Before long, those creatures you've spotted in the distance, there's now hundreds of them, and they're all coming after you. Those calm, wholesome feelings you felt before falling down here are gone now, and they've transformed into something else. Dread, sorrow, apprehensive, uncomfortable. But they also help form an attachment between the cat and the player. You want this cat to make it out of here and return to their family. This game has hooked and reeled you in before you've even realised it, and it's done that without any text or dialogue, only through colour, interaction, and emotion. It's not all doom and gloom though. Far from it actually, because once you've survived your first terrifying encounter with the local wildlife, those things are called Zerks by the way, you make a new friend, who also serves as the second main character, B12, a small robot who offers his assistance in finding a way out of the city. It's through B12 that you get to experience everything the world has to offer. Throughout the game, he serves as a communicator during interactions with NPCs, while also having a direct impact on the gameplay through hacking security systems, picking up items, and being a light source to guide the way forward. Without him, you wouldn't get very far. The best thing he introduces, in my opinion, is his own storyline, and that's something you experience as you journey through the city by uncovering past memories that let the world building truly shine. To start with, B12 has lost most of his memories, but they can be regained by interacting with certain points of interest. It's kind of like a collectible system, but it's actually rewarding because you get to learn more about the world. Likewise, the environmental storytelling is spot on. You really get a feel of what life in this city is like. Again, more on that in a bit. As for B12's storyline, I'm not going to go much more into it than I already have, but it's one of the things that makes Stray really stand out, because it's something that wasn't really necessary to begin with. It transforms the game beyond the throwaway cute cat game definition. The bond that the two characters share is what provides a light in some of the more dark places, both figuratively and literally. They become an inseparable duo that rely on each other for survival. If you're only getting the game for the cat, that's understandable, but you'll end up staying for the both of them. I think I've gone on about the story and the characters for long enough though, plus I want to avoid spoilers. Yes, both of these aspects are incredible, but there are other areas of this game that are worth equal highlight. One of these is the level design and presentation. When you first enter the city, you aren't greeted with all that much, aside from, well, a dump. At first it feels like you're traversing an old ruin. In some ways that's true, since everything looks abandoned, but there's also danger created by the presence of the Zerks, which makes some places uninhabitable. It's only when you persevere and explore deeper that you get to witness some of its beauty. There are so many set pieces in this game that you just have to stare at for a while because the scale of this place is huge. It's also multi-leveled, something that is a key characteristic of the city. The reason why the place looks so inhospitable in the beginning is because you pretty much start at the lowest point of the city. I mean, you did just come out of a sewer, so that's a bit of a giveaway. After falling underground, it's a pretty obvious assumption that the way out is to go up, and although the path is far more complicated than that, that is essentially what you do for most of the game. Go up, or find a way to go up. And the only way to really do that is by climbing. Good thing you're a cat then. I know it's just part of the story, but this plays directly into the hallmark trait of being a cat, the need to climb and explore. Having the core story revolve around that in the subtle way that it does showcases the attention to detail this game has. Nevertheless, as far as level design is concerned, they do some interesting things with this concept as well. The higher you climb up the city, the more well-maintained it seems to be. Generally, the flashier areas are reserved in the higher levels, whose trash ends up getting poured down into the lower sectors. It isn't just the appearance that's impacted by this structure, however. Their way of life is another aspect that's directly influenced by where they are in relation to the city. The first village you come across is a perfect example of this. Here, things found in scrap heaves are traded to others in exchange for other goods, something you yourself can get involved in through the odd side quest. Clothing is generally more worn out, and the streets are less taken care of. The lighting is also dimmer, with persistent hues of orange and yellow. Despite the grimness in some areas, it's still a charming little place, and most of its residents seem okay. Contrast this to the town you find on the upper levels. Sure, the streets are still a bit messy, but the sudden punch of the neon signs and fancier clothing of its residents tells much about what it's like to live here. It is also the source of a massive authoritarian surveillance state, but I guess nowhere's perfect. You might be wondering by now, where are all the people, the human people? As far as the game tells you, there aren't any. Not anymore. This is a post-apocalyptic game, remember? The robots are the only residents aside from the Zerks, and yet, despite what they are, they do feel remarkably human. For starters, pretty much every settled place has a bar with a bartender behind it. Normal robot things. Other examples go way beyond that though. There are musicians, barbers, computer savvies, traders, scientists, gardeners, street punks, police. I could go on. They're very much human in their societal structure. One thing I really liked about them, and it's something that I don't see very much at all in other games, is that they all have dialogue. Sure, most of it is throwaway one-liners, and you do get the odd repetition, but for the most part, each NPC feels like its own individual, and that's not something you can say for the vast majority of games like this. Then you have the Zerks. God, I hate these things. In all honesty, they only really exist to serve the gameplay, rather than having a tangible narrative connection, but regardless, they do provide some variety when it comes to what you can find. Suffice to say, they're not friendly. They run after anything they can see and consume everything they touch. They're basically an infestation. Places with high abundances of them end up being quarantined to reduce their spread, which results in a buildup of massive nests. And of course, you have to go through them. The nastiest places you travel to in the city are always places that have been overwhelmed with Zerks. Everything begins to change, and the game goes from feeling cyberpunkish to some kind of eldritch nightmare. It's only from a distance where you can begin to see just how widespread their infection can get. Their existence is never really explained, which I guess just adds to the horror of them. Because of the game's linear nature, you are forced to traverse all of the city's main districts, not only ensuring that you understand the general layout of it all, but to fully immerse you into its world. It's weird because, although you see a lot of it, there's still so much of it that remains unseen, making you wonder just how many other settlements there are scattered around, separated from each other thanks to the Zerks. I'm not exaggerating when I say that this is one of the most enticing, well thought out, and intricately detailed game worlds I have seen in a long time. Everything looks amazing. I spent ages wandering around the towns, climbing onto rooftops to get better views. There is just so much to see. Even the characters look fantastic. The look and movement of the cats are incredibly realistic, right down to the smallest motion. Likewise, the robot citizens are just as interesting, with all kinds of outfits and physical designs. All of this though is helped by the immaculate lighting that instantly sets the mood of every location you visit. Whether that's through various cracks in the ceiling providing brief glimpses of surface light, or the dozens of lampposts or light displays shining the way forward. The atmosphere is just top notch. Bonus points to the music too, it helps capture the charm that each place radiates. One thing I loved was the amount of freedom you're given to explore these areas. It never ceases to be impressive seeing where you are from above. Moments like these highlight the amount of work that went into crafting these set pieces. But speaking of climbing, how does that work? How does the game feel to play as a whole? Spoiler alert, it's fantastic. After everything I've talked about in this video so far, you've probably been able to get an idea of what kind of game this is, genre-wise. It's very parkour-centric, and pretty much everything mechanically revolves around that aspect. Climbing up buildings, navigating pipelines, fleeing from hordes of Zerks. Parkour is what ties everything together, and is your only means of survival. It would have been problematic, then, if there were any hiccups in the movement system that may interfere with the flow of the game. And yet, to my amazement, there isn't a single one. at least not that I could find. It's one of the smoothest traversement systems I have ever come across. This is mainly because you can only jump when given a prompt to do so. That might sound restrictive, and it is in a way, but for a good reason. For starters, it makes the game highly accessible. You don't have to worry about building the right momentum or having to leap from a specific angle. You look for the prompt, then you jump. It does make things pretty easy, and I'll add that the game as a whole isn't all that difficult. Its main challenges come from its chase sequences, its puzzles, and the odd stealth section, and even they aren't overly complex. It's not something that bothered me in the slightest, however, because of how well made those obstacles are. In fact, its straightforwardness is something that I adored about Stray. There's just enough room to stretch your legs and wander around, while not being so open to the point where you're aimlessly lost and buried by the buildings around you. While it could have just as well been an open world game, it has all the makings for it. I'm so glad it isn't, because it would take away from the beautiful simplicity of the experience. Outside of linear traversal, you have these hubs. These are settled areas filled with robotic denizens that are the calmest parts of the game. There's 3 altogether, and I've already gone over how impressive they are visually. What I should also mention is that they have quite a bit of depth to them from a gameplay standpoint as well. I mentioned before that B12 can interact with specific points of interest that allow him to regain some of his memories. While serving a thematic purpose, it does also serve as a collectible system of sorts. It's easy to miss some of these spots, which encourages you to explore more, but should you fail to acquire them all by the end of the game, it gives a bit of a replay value as well. On top of that, you'll also find mini side quests that, upon completion, allow you to obtain items that relate to other quests. I guess these are more errands than side quests, and they don't have much in the way of substantial weight, but they do give you something else to do that isn't risking your life. Plus, it gives you a reason to interact with the world around you, and the people who live in it. I also just think that it's a really charming idea to have these errands scattered around. Even during your quest, you're still willing to help the citizens around you with menial tasks. Whether it's getting somebody some clothing to keep warm, yeah, I know they're robots but they want clothes, finding energy drinks to deal with a local trader, or scavenging sheets of music for a lone musician to play. Each one is personal in some way. I mean, sure, it's probably not realistic for a cat to want to help with stuff like that, but it's sci-fi, so I'll allow it. Of course, it wouldn't be an immersive cat game if you couldn't be a menace at the same time. Believe me when I say that Stray is authentic, to say the least. If you have or have had a cat, you're going to feel right at home here when playing this. The amount of interactivity here is fantastic. You can knock down piles of items, creating a mess everywhere. You can scratch doors to the point where somebody is forced to open it. You can make people around you miserable by tripping them up or just irritating them in some way. And of course, can't forget the meow button. The world is very much your playground, and it's stuff like this that prevents the game from being overly bleak, while also adding to the authenticity of the whole thing. I'm going to do an IGN thing here. The game makes you feel like a cat. Oh god, I hate saying that out loud. It's true though, it does. You're not going to get a more genuine cat experience than this. It has officially dominated the market. But, as I've said before, Stray is more than just a cute cat game. Sometimes it's an action and adventure game. Other times it's a stealth and survival game. There are times where it can become quite intense and even stressful. It's at these periods where the complexity and the challenge pick up by a considerable margin. The chase sequences are the most obvious example of that. Don't get me wrong, they couldn't be more linear. You are just basically following a singular path, but it's far from straightforward either, especially during some of the later encounters. Timing and awareness of your environment are everything. Without consideration for both, you're doomed to fail. What looks like a potential exit down the road can very quickly turn into a death trap, so being quick to react is also a necessity. Another aspect you have to be constantly aware of is the Zerks themselves. Not only do you have to be running and jumping as fast as you can, but you also have to move out of the way of any leaping assailants. Quite a change from the usual meow and harassing NPCs. What I really liked about these is that they never felt repetitive, not once. They each present their own challenges, and the environments that they're all located in are varied enough to make each feel distinct. they're also not overused to the point they become tedious. Going on the opposite end of dangerous flamboyance, you have stealth sections which, I admit, you only encounter in a specific part of the game, but they're substantial enough to warrant their own highlight regardless of their frequency. They're nothing groundbreaking mechanically, but they do introduce a new dynamic to the gameplay, and they can be pretty challenging. At least for me. I really hate stealth. In my opinion, this was the most challenging area of the game. You need to avoid the line of sight of the drones and sneak past them. You can't fight them, and if they spot you, they will chase after you and shoot you when in range. I know, they'd shoot a cat, it's horrific. They do vary these encounters up later on by introducing other obstacles, and they also create situations where the drones are stationary, so you have to think about how you're going to get past them. It's quite different from anything else you've experienced up to this point, and it does take some getting used to, but the change of pace and difficulty help the game's final act stand out. Lastly, you have puzzles. Most of these tie into the numerous errands I mentioned earlier, with a few being dedicated to the main levels. These aren't overly challenging, and they won't take you too long to complete, with the exception of a couple here and there. They're still engaging though, and they require you to explore your surroundings, and in some cases do your own investigations. As it does with plenty of other things, Stray nails the balance between complexity and engagement. Nothing ever irritated me to the point of exhaustion, while at the same time, I never felt like I was feeling idle while playing. And this applies to the entire game. My playthrough managed to last 7 hours, but I still didn't get to see everything on offer. I spent a lot of time rummaging around villages because it was enjoyable to do so, and there's so much substance in each place you travel to that completely absorbs you into its world. So, yeah, Stray is more than just a cute cat game. If you've made it this far, then thank you for putting up with my rambling. As you can probably tell by now, this game is something special. If you're not going to take my word for it, take the words of other people into account. The game was received extremely well, and received multiple awards, and was a Game of the Year nominee at the Game Awards. All of these speak volumes, and I'm not surprised by much of it. The truth is, Stray is a one-of-a-kind game. Everything about it is connected and tied up with a perfectly neat ribbon. Careful consideration was placed into every facet of its creation, to the point where there aren't any rough edges I could find whatsoever. The last thing I was expecting was to be met with an incredibly engaging narrative, both from its main story and through its world building, and not to mention the emotional rollercoaster it ended up becoming. In terms of sci-fi settings, it's probably one of the most compelling I've seen in a long time. And the world itself is a sight to behold, even if it is shrouded in darkness. It manages to be gritty, beautiful, and haunting, depending on where you are, which just showcases the diversity of it. The citizens that inhabit it are full of personality and make it all the more memorable. It may not have a vast amount of mechanics, but what's there is polished to perfection. This is the most authentic cat game experience you're going to find. Until they make Stray 2. Perhaps? Maybe? If it isn't obvious already, this was my Game of the Year for 2022. Yes, in the year where the likes of Horizon Forbidden West, Elden Ring, and God of War Ragnarok, the titans of AAA titles that were released that year, Stray was the one that stood out on top for me. Don't overlook this game for what it may appear to be. It's not built on a gimmick or a sad attempt at catching a certain niche. It's a true labour of love that will no doubt become an instant classic. It's easily one of my favourite games ever. Thanks for watching. There's a good chance that this will be the longest video that I've made so far. It took me months to write the script and make the video, so it bloody better be. I hope you enjoyed it nevertheless. It was originally going to be part of my indie review series, but it turns out I had a lot to write about it, so I decided to make it its own thing. If you're new here, this isn't too different from what I usually make. I like to make videos about indie games, specifically reviews, so if that's something you might be interested in, then be sure to check them out, and subscribe if you enjoy them. A like on this video would also be appreciated. Let me know in the comments what you thought of Stray if you've already played it. Until the next video, I'll see you soon. Bye.